KKK, the Krystal and Kyle Kalinske. And maybe, I'm willing to be schooled on this. Maybe, just maybe, that maybe the two of them do go off about the conflict in Sudan and Darfur. Maybe they do, occasionally cop to the fact that the Wagner group not only had rape squads in Bucha and other places like that, but also in Somalia and places like that. But it's curious to me that they land on, and probably more on breaking points. I've seen Sagar do more stuff that's like supportive of the Russian side of things, but I don't see a lot of pushback from Krystal, so I guess they're kind of punching it again. I'm watching the audio to see if it goes out, whatever I'm trying. Yeah. So let me give an update on how they run this. This is the beginning of their show, or of her doing, they didn't do a breaking point show, so she just threw up a half-hour video. This is her breakdown of what's going on in the stories, and I'll just want to show you.
Hey guys, so had a lot of updates I wanted to bring you with regards to Israel and go through everything that we have learned just in the past couple of days. So
yeah, so this video is, I don't know where there's a title. Yeah, okay. The title about this: confirmed IDF Biden lied about Hamas hospital tunnels. They're using a Washington Post article, which should surprise no one, does not say that. The only argument between the Washington Post is whether what was under the al-Shifa hospital qualifies as a headquarters or simply a hub, or where the connections to the tunnels were in the side buildings because it's an entire complex, not the single hospital building. That she uses that to kind of red wash this entire thing. But yeah,
of bombshell investigations from mainstream outlets, the Washington
suddenly the mainstream is trustworthy and stuff, which is great. I'm glad she's coming around. Yeah.
Post now confirming that the IDF lied in their justification of attacking al-Shifa hospital. I'll break that very important report down for you. I do not want to lose sight of that because that's
okay. That's the Washington Post al-Shifa hospital story. Okay, so let me this would be, I'll just show you guys. December 21st. So this is the most recent story about it. Let me just, here you go. The case of al-Shifa investigating the assault on Gaza's largest hospital. This is this will be the title. So the idea is that she just said they lied, flat out lied. So we'll get to that in a second. But here's the story. Let's just give you an example. Weeks before Israel sent troops into al-Shifa hospital, its spokesman began building a public case. The claims were remarkably specific. 5 hospital buildings were directly involved in Hamas activities, that the buildings that sat atop underground tunnels that were used by buildings, by the way, and notice this, not that the al-Shifa hospital, the primary building, was the main way in, but that the buildings around them, the ones with the snipers' nests and all that kind of stuff. But, well, they play really fast and loose with things like that. You got to pay attention to the fact that it isn't just, the hospital isn't one building. And that's why you can float this idea that they're lying about one thing or whatever. Okay, sat atop underground tunnels that were used by militants to direct rocket attacks and command fighters, and that the tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. The assertions were backed by concrete evidence, Israel Defense Forces spokesman Daniel Hagari said as he laid out the case in the October 27th briefing. As storming the complex on November 15th, the IDF released a series of photographs and videos that it said proved its central point. Terrorists can come here to command their operations, said in a video published November 22nd, guiding viewers through an underground tunnel illuminating dark and empty rooms beneath al-Shifa. But the evidence presented by the Israeli government falls short of showing that Hamas had been using the hospital as a command and control center, according to the Washington Post analysis of open source visuals, satellite imagery, and all of the publicly released IDF materials, which is just their statements. Again, open source stuff. Okay. That raises critical questions. Legal and humanitarian experts say about whether the civilian harm caused by the military operations against the hospital, encircling, besieging, and ultimately raiding the facility and the tunnel beneath it, and they don't dispute there's tunnels beneath it, were proportionate to the assessed threat. Okay. Do you see anything in this that says they outright lied about this idea? What the Post is saying is that they feel the threat was exaggerated, or that the IDF didn't made a bigger case than what was actually there or than what they found. They found, yes, exactly. They found tunnels big enough to drive a fucking car through underneath the hospital complex. It had been a month since the attacks. They had announced that they were coming to al-Shifa and surrounding the place, and that they had no intention of bombing the place, but that they were going to raid it and look for stuff. They packed up on purpose. Nobody is that stupid. Okay, the rooms connected to the tunnel network discovered by IDF troops show no immediate evidence of military use by Hamas. That's because they had bugged out to the other sites because they knew they were coming. Why would you leave? And why did they didn't hang till the last minute? They announced for weeks that they were coming. Again, none of the 5 buildings identified by Hagari appeared to be connected to the tunnel network. That one in particular isn't particularly true. The primary ones on the site were, and again, outside the building, across like this little compound area is an area that goes down into the tunnel, out the doors of the hospital. You can also get there through the basement. It's so weird. There's no evidence tunnels could be accessed from inside hospital wards. And that's the idea. No, because the hospital wards aren't on like the 3rd basement level. Okay. Hours before the IDF entered the complex, Biden administration declassified U.S. intelligence assessments that said it bolstered Israel's claims. In the aftermath of the raid, Israel and U.S. officials have stood firm behind their initial statements. We are absolutely confident in the intelligence that Hamas was using it as a command and control node. And again, that's the difference. They say node, they're saying she's saying center. That's where they're arguing this point, that this was one of their command centers, not the command center. And this is the argument. It's so ridiculous. And this is, again, you can disagree with their assessment or think it was overblown, or you can even make the case that the Washington Post is saying that they made too much of the al-Shifa hospital and therefore endangered perhaps patients. It's a reasonable argument to have. I don't necessarily side with it in this particular situation, but the idea that they outright lied when they found what they found is just dumb. It's so gross. So, and again, this is the article she's talking about. And she just said that the IDF outright lied. Right. Senior official told the Post last week, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive findings, Hamas has been holding the hostages in the hospital camp. Yeah. A senior administration official told the Post last week on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive findings, Hamas had been holding the hostages in the hospital compound until shortly before Israel went in. The U.S. government has not made any of the declassified material public, and the official would not share the intelligence his assessment was based on because more people will get killed and blah, blah, blah. Like, silly. The IDF has published extensive, irrefutable evidence that points to the abuse of the Shifa hospital complex. And again, there you go, the difference. Complex. There's like 10 buildings on this site. They're all attached. You can get to them, you get to one building from underground, and that building goes to the tunnels. And so can you get to it from the wards of the main hospital? No, you have to go through an underground tunnel to get to the other building, and that's not attached to the main tunnel complex. You go down another place. It's just fucking stupid. Like and again, it's not so bad if you're arguing about the tenuous nature of the connectivity of the entire space, but the fact that she's just like, they just lied. They just fucking lied. They fucking lied. Oy. Before I was convinced al-Shifa their operations were taking place, I think there has to be a new level of demonstration. They should have more proof at this point. That's the other senior official in Congress, a member of Congress, told the Post, which they didn't cite. I'm not quite sure why. I understand why intelligence people might want to speak off the record, but I don't get why a senior U.S. member of Congress told the Post. Whatever. The targeting by a U.S. ally of a compound housing hundreds of sick and dying patients and thousands of displaced people, and that's the other part too, the thousands of displaced people, that they were using it as a shelter, and also that the displaced people aren't women and children, they're grown men, and that those guys are dressed in civvy clothes and they're armed until the bug out. It's just stupid. Has no precedent in recent decades. Yes, it does. Also, part of what lack of precedent there is for it is the fact that most of the people that are fighting in the world right now don't use hospitals as cover. The march on al-Shifa caused the hospital's operations to collapse as Israelis closed in and fighting intensified. Fuel ran out, supplies could not enter, and the ambulance... No. Fuel did not run out and supplies could not enter. They dropped them off for the Hamas people to do it. They refused to take them. That's another thing, too. and ambulances were unable to collect casualties from the streets because of crossfire, not because the Israelis would fire on ambulances, which is, if you don't say that, that's the presumption. Before troops entered the complex, doctors dug a mass grave for as many as 180 people, the United Nations said, citing hospital staff. That I don't get, too. Before they entered, who the fuck did they throw in there? This before the Israelis showed up? Also, what's buried with those bodies? Doctors dug a mass grave? What, they just stopped working on patients, picked up shovels, and started digging a mass grave for as many as 180 people. That is one of the weirdest parts of this whole article. Is anybody in the chat room got an explanation that I can bite into for that shit? Right? Yeah, all grown men, armed. Yes, more than they. Right? What? How in the world? What does that even fucking mean? Before troops entered the complex, doctors dug a mass grave for as many as 180 people. Okay, most population dense spot on the earth. More people in Gaza packed in like sardines. How it's almost like the WAPO is helping naming nonsense of genocide. Joe actually helping Trump and MAGA. What? Helping, then naming carrying the genocide Joe thing. Yes, I would argue that that's exactly what this is. But this part of it sticks out to me. The United Nations said, citing hospital staff. So the hospital staff said that doctors, hold on. I gotta see what the fuck. So this is citing the UN, UNRWA, hostilities in the Gaza Strip, and flash update. Only one of the hospitals, key points, is this number 39. 40 patients died in al-Shifa hospital on 14 November, according to the Ministry of Health. The hospital reported preparations for a mass grave inside the compound to bury 180 bodies of patients, which cannot be evacuated due to the intense fighting. So they can't get those patients out. Would they just bury them alive? The hospital reported preparations for a mass grave inside the compound to bury 180 bodies of patients, which cannot be evacuated due to intense fighting. Hospitals and medical personnel are specifically protected under international humanitarian law, and all parties with the conflict must ensure their protection. Yeah, unless you open fire from the grounds, and then all bets are off. That's the problem. That's what Hamas does. In 48 hours, telecommunications companies were expected to run out of fuel on 14th of November. They didn't. Okay, in some areas they were reportedly shut down already. The companies have done 91 trucks carrying. Okay, yeah, there you go. Although 91 trucks carrying humanitarian aid entered from Egypt on 14 November, the distribution of supplies to shelters, clinics, and beneficiaries has already come to a halt due to lack of fuel. The Israeli authorities have indicated that on November 15 they would allow the entry of a limited amount of fuel into Gaza to be used exclusively to run trucks for the distribution of incoming humanitarian aid. This represents a fraction of the fuel needs for humanitarian operations. Meanwhile, the entry of the fuel for any other use, including the operation of generators at hospitals and at water and sanitation facilities, remains banned. This will be the first since October 7th that fuel is allowed into Gaza. Yeah, but they didn't run out the day of October 7th. Okay, never mind. Anyway, so I don't know what the hell that was. Did you guys see that doctors dug graves? Who excavated this mass grave of 180 people before they were dead? Okay. Citing hospital staff. The morgue had long since ceased to function. Several days later, when WHO medics arrived to evacuate those still inside, they said the place of healing had become a death zone. At least 40 patients, including 4 premature babies, died in the days leading up to the raid and its aftermath. Died in the days leading up to the raid and its aftermath. Remember the footage from al-Shifa Hospital of them treating adult males on the floor? And there were like multiple guys with gunshot wounds and other shit that were running around, all of them fighting age males or whatever. They were treating those guys, but they pulled what? Resources away from babies to treat the soldiers? Is that what? All right. In the weeks since, other hospitals in Gaza have come under attack in ways that mirror what happened in al-Shifa, making the assault not just a watershed moment in the conflict, but a vital case study in Israel's adherence to the laws of war. Protected status. The al-Shifa hospital complex was Gaza's most advanced and best equipped hospital. After Israel launched its withering campaign of airstrikes in retaliation, al-Shifa became the beating heart of the enclave's faltering health system, as well as a place for refugees of refuge for tens of thousands of displaced Gazans who feared they'd be killed in their homes. All of them just dudes, amazingly. Medical facilities are afforded special protection even in times of wars, losing their status only while they are being used outside their medical function to commit acts of harmful to the enemy. That's yes. They had snipers' nests and rocket launchers. Yeah, it's Israel and Hamas's conflict war. Well said. Without a complete understanding of Israeli intelligence's battle plans, the legality of Israel's military options against al-Shifa remains an open question. Does that say that they lie? Again, you can have the argument about this. That's not what I'm saying. You don't have to totally look the other way if you think Israel's doing something wrong, or you don't have to automatically assume right on either side in this. But is this article saying what she just said it said? That's the important thing. Because if I have to get on fucking Bongholio about this shit, right, we can react this way. Okay, now.
Such a pretext for launching attacks on hospitals throughout the Gaza Strip. So we'll break that down.
Okay, no. They didn't, like, they're not airstriking fucking hospitals. And the only pretext that matches what they're doing with other hospitals is warning people that they're coming, sending in troops, which gets more troops killed because they're not bombing the area. They're assuming it is a hospital, at least in major function. And so they actually have people go in there and check everyone. And again, like the idea that they find dead babies, but somehow it's the raid's fault when they've been dead for, in some cases, a week. But they're still treating military-age men with stuff like... Anyways, just like I said, listen to what she's saying versus what the article says.
We also have a New York Times visual investigation of all of the 2,000-pound bombs that have been dropped on Gaza, including in the area where they explicitly told civilians to evacuate to. We also have multiple...
Okay, they have also been telling people to move to a certain area, and then when they have hit the place that they're going to hit, they go, hey, Hamas has moved to under where you guys are, so you guys got to keep moving. We're going to hit that place next. It's not the same thing. It's just they're just bombing where refugees are.
Examples of just blatant U.S. hypocrisy and an Israeli spokesperson admitting, hey, in spite of all these reports, they're pressuring behind the scenes. They're pressuring us behind the scenes. They're not doing that. We're in lockstep. Their support for us is completely unshakable. So break that.
Oh, gotcha. So what she's saying there is the Israeli spokespeople and I guess in the meeting with Lloyd Austin, they were talking about how, people have been talking about how like Biden administration's been pressuring Israel to watch what they do and how they do it, and has been, helped negotiate a lot of that hostage exchange that happened, have been talking to them on the regular about what they're hitting and how they're hitting it, because they're going to lose the sympathy of the world and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, in terms of the overall conflict, they are going, we are in lockstep with Israel. There is no crisscross here. The public-facing comments of a government, especially at war, and their allies, does anybody think that France, England, the United States, and Canada, and shit, and I don't know, the Nordic countries, the Slavic countries, whatever, during fucking World War II, weren't yelling at each other behind the scenes when they were talking about what great allies they were in front of things because of the nature of the conflict they were in. Again, I don't mind people criticizing these situations, but the idea that we all just have to become dumbly naive, right? We all just gotta throw out everything we know about the world and just enter into this fucking born yesterday idea. We've got a new breaking news on the Thanks, Bike Shop Guru. The U.S. will provide Ukraine with up to $250 million in arms and equipment, including air defense, munitions, artillery ammunition. The U.S. has announced the package of arms includes Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, additional HIMARS ammunition, Javelin AT-4 anti-armor systems, as well as artillery and small arms ammunition. It is the Biden administration's 54th disbursement of military equipment to the Ukraine since August 2021. Yeah, so these are also, every time they do a big package of billions of dollars, and then every time a small package of that goes out the door, they have to sign off on it. Kind of like, we requisition this. Okay, cool. We'll gather that together. Okay, as soon as it gets together, you let me know. And then when it goes out the door, I'll sign another thing. That's how a lot of that works. Most people think it stacks on top of what we've done, and it doesn't necessarily. Although the Biden administration is using a different funding source for some of the other stuff. Yeah. Did anybody see the mass in Bethlehem? What they were doing, just like in Ukraine, is terrible. I did not see that. I don't know what you're referring to, but there you go. We should stand for all innocent civilians. I completely agree. But I don't suppose I have to get my channel kicked off the air showing you the footage of the dead girl that the Hamas fighters brought back into Gaza, that they were holding her head up and dropping her on the back of the truck, and everybody, the regular Palestinians who were around, were spitting on her. Right? Men, women, and children spitting on this dead girl who had been sexually assaulted so badly that her pelvis broke, and then they shot her in the head while she was being sexually assaulted during the assault. And they had her body in a truck, and they were parading it around and lifting her above, basically just showing she was dead to everybody, and people were spitting on her. Yeah. And again, KK Kalinske over here and her husband, insofar as I know, have not watched the footage that Hamas put on their own Telegram channel. And unless you do, I don't want to hear your argument about it. I think if all you're seeing is bombing footage of buildings, and you're ignoring the fact that, again, that Israel warns people that they put stuff in, that it is war and it is terrible, but they are, seemingly doing just about everything you can in a situation like this to, stuff the Allies didn't do when they bombed Dresden. They're doing this, they're letting them know ahead of time. And you can still disagree with it, but that's what you're seeing. If you're only seeing that part of it, and you refuse to watch the stuff that they did, no matter who you are, I'm not going to get a balanced conversation about it no matter what. Right? And you put down a whole group of people, insinuate it's okay to let these people die. No, not at all. I'm just saying they side with, that a greater number of them side with what Hamas did than is said. They're not prisoners of Hamas in mass. If that makes sense. And it's not, we're not talking about like 8 or 10 people. We're talking a whole street full of people. If it happened in the United States, people would condemn the entire country for that happening. Shoot, every time we have a mass shooting, everybody goes, American society is disgusting. When we're 240 million people, we have these things happen in our country, and they're terrible when they do, but they're not indicative of the people that are across the street from you at any given time, most of the time. Unless that was your actual neighbor. No, and you're right, Sarpis. They have not watched the videos of Putin soldiers castrating a Ukrainian soldier or shooting prisoners of war. Because to them, it's a coin flip.
We also have new revelations about exactly what Bibi is planning for the day after. And it's ethnic cleansing. This is just one additional report adding some context to that, but I really don't want to lose sight of what's going on there. And we have new allegations coming from the UN of war crimes being committed by Israel, in particular, 11 men summarily executed. That is the allegation. So before I jump into all of this, I just want to say I really wanted to give Griffin and Mac, our fantastic producers, true time off over the holidays, but I obviously wanted to keep you guys updated as well. So I'm using some new tech to try to be able to put up elements on my own. Bear with me a little bit.
Oh, cry me a river, lady. This is where good old KK Kalinske and I share some pain. Again, the allegations part of it, and again, just smiling this off. It's just something that happens. This is obviously the Jews are committing horrible atrocities. It's all one-sided. Hamas fighters are completely justified in what they did. October 7th was not only called for, but it's probably Israelis' fault and all that stuff. Yeah. So I just wanted to dip into the topic. This is a 30-minute thing, so I'm obviously not going to cover it tonight, whatever. But the important thing that I really want to stress in this conversation is that be careful of the people who watch one side of the argument only and make their argument from that side. And the only time they ever see, especially in a situation like this, we're not just talking about political pissing contests like Ben Shapiro will do or something like that. We're talking about life and death. And if you won't even engage in absorbing what the people that you're criticizing are fighting against, even in their own perception, and you're just writing it off as, well, they kind of had it coming, then at what point why would I take you seriously if you were pissed about Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Why? If what Hamas did is justified, what's the difference with Hiroshima and Nagasaki? A matter of scale? Right? Is it just volume? Is just the amount of roasted dead? That's the idea. And again, if what Israel is doing in Gaza is evil, then sorry, I think my computer is cooking, so I'm going to sign off. Why not just shut the show down when we're at the height of a controversial idea? But here's what I would say is, whenever you're listening to somebody on this, you really have to pay attention as to, and this happens more with the Russian part of things, the Russia-Ukraine fight too. Thanks so much, La Smucharina. Happy holidays. Start our own aid organization that can't be corrupted. Food for the peacemakers worldwide. Thanks for helping me, keep me sane. That's not a bad idea. It's great. The sort of like food without borders. Huh? That'd be a good idea. That's not, yeah. I think I like food without borders. Just like a hunger thing where we just fly stuff in and drop it, and maybe you get drones. Wait, you get, how one of the reasons why they can't get food aid into some places like in Sudan and other places because the planes will get shot down. They actually Sudanese have an air force, and they, and the other side has rocket launchers, and so shit can't get through. Maybe you do it with drones, so you're dropping food relief in there, right? Until UN aid is blocked by the IDF. Yeah, but it isn't. It is not. It just has to be examined first. And in cases where UNRWA has Hamas buddies working with them, they won't let them look. And when they do, they're like, okay, that's ammunition. That's the other thing too. I think those things should be more exposed as well. There should be more stories. I'll dig down into some of that stuff and show you some of the drop-offs where people use aid as cover for other stuff, because then you can kind of understand why the limitations on it. It's a good story to have. It's sad that it happens and it shouldn't happen, but if you understood that a little bit, then maybe with that piece of knowledge, then your brain moves into solution mode, and you're like, well, why don't they do it this way? Or we come up with another situation where we can get food in that doesn't have that issue. I mean, like the same way you enter like concerts and ballparks nowadays with see-through bags. You know what I mean? Right? You know how you have to, we all have to, if we want to go to a football game or a concert or something like that, and you have a bag with you, it's got to be transparent. You know what I'm talking about? There's got to be a similar solution in these circumstances for aid that would go through. The only reason a lot of this stuff is wrapped up the way it is and is opaque is because, you know, it's sitting for a long time and you want to protect it from sunlight or something like that. But that, you know, that would be once you're aware of what the problem is fully, then you can get into solution mode. That's why, you know, I've always been a big fan of having the most information you can have. Dude, all I hear from you is Gaza has it coming? No. Why would you think that? If I thought Gaza had it coming, then I would be genuinely. I would honestly. I would be calling for carpet bombing of the place. I'm not. Nor is anyone. I mean, on that I know of. I'm sure there's somebody saying everything somewhere, right? Clear backpacks, so security can search in seconds. Exactly. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm anti-Hamas. I'm not anti-Gaza. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Would you think I was ginning for the destruction of Gaza before October 7th? Yeah. But I'm saying that if you have all the information, then you come up with solutions that actually work. And this goes to the same thing we deal with the economics of COVID, when people are so fucking confused about, you know, I don't know why the recession didn't happen, and these inflation numbers, you know, no matter what we do to the money supply, inflation kept going up. It's like, because it's supply shock, fuckhead, and you're not factoring this one element in. You're pretending this very large, important part of the conversation doesn't exist. And anytime you do that, you're only going to, whatever your solution is, it's not going to solve the problem. It will always be missing the amount that solves to X. Whatever that X is that you don't have factored in, that exists, but you're not practically putting into the conversation or into the equation, is always that gap is gonna exist there. And when it's security, when you're talking about, you know, like border security or national security and those kind of things, you're gonna end up with a gap that's very dangerous. We fund the means to create more death? No, we don't. Let me show you something real quick. Can I show you something? Let me do this real quick. Let's see. There are okay. Let me show you what okay. Let me run this by. I'll show you in a second. Okay. Anybody in the chat know what, let's see, and especially our dear friend who thinks that all we do is kill and kill. Anybody, does anybody know what RUTF stands for? Anybody know what RUTF is? You know, I'll give you a clue. It has to do with food. Somebody might know, and they might look it up. RUTF. I expect, by the way, the people who say that that are like, you know, all we do is murder, all we do is kill, the West is terrible, blah, blah, blah. Specifically those folks who think that we side with Israel because we're warmongers and want the Gazans to die, that stuff. Like anybody who says that on the regular. Anybody who's selling the whole military industrial complex, war is profitable, corporations in America only want war. And if you're ever saying that, those kind of things, do you know what RUTF means? There you go. Ali Osher jumps in there. Yeah, it's there you go. Some of you are starting to Google it. There you go. Ready to use therapeutic food. That's this stuff right here. Okay. In Sudan, this is the only thing saving tens of thousands of children from dying. In both sides of this conflict, the U.S. and our partners play no other part except for trying to get food in there, and specifically these things. Okay, the UN distributes these. America and the Western allies pay for most of it. Most of the money that goes to this through UNICEF goes directly from our funding that we give, the kind of stuff that the Republicans are often trying to cut, and donations, people who donate to UNICEF as well. You can also buy these things and you can sell them. They're about, I think, maybe $10. We'll make, I don't know, maybe 20 of them, something like that. Okay. And they have a system in Sudan and in the surrounding areas, and in South Sudan right now, there's obviously an open battle zone right there as well, where people bring their children in and they put a little measuring tape around them, and that measuring tape has a red, yellow, and a green, and they cinch it up to whatever the tightness is on the kid's arm to measure it, and if it's in the red, they're suffering from acute malnutrition, and they stay there, and then they put them. And if they're yellow, they also do it, but for not as long. They put them on this stuff. They give them enough packets where the mother can feed this to the kid every day. It's 500 calories of protein and other stuff in these little tubes, and the whole goal is to get them from the red and the yellow to the green. Many children take RUTF. We do the measurements from the mid-upper arm circumference of the children. Mid-upper arm circumference, that's the MUAC measurement. To identify their malnutrition, if the circumference is below 11 centimeter, 0.5, then they are in for treatment. So if it gets below that point, they start feeding them these things to get their body weight up. And it is singularly, there's the little measurement. That's what they're using. This is in Darfur, over here. The amount of malnutrition, these are the pack meals that they're talking about. Without these, so over 40,000 children under 5 years of age die annually in Sudan as a direct result of malnutrition. That's with us doing everything we can in a war zone. The U.S. and our allies, and specifically through UNICEF, arrange for these programs. People get in on this, and like Musicians Sans Frontières, Physicians Sans Frontières, the Doctors Without Borders, and other groups will help this system, but it is a UN project fundamentally driven by the biggest awfuls in the world, according to the America Sucks crowd.
Here's what I found.
Thank you. So I want to be abundantly clear that the idea that we export murder, or that we want that as a primary thing, or that that's the only way we make money, or the only thing we're interested in, is garbage. Because quite frankly, in all of these areas, if they were busy killing themselves and we wanted genocide or the clearing out of places like this, we just sit back and let it happen. But we don't. And the only people who think we do just don't know what we're doing all the time. This stuff matters. And it only happens because we give a shit. And if you ask people like Krystal and Kyle what RUTF is for, it's just to fatten up babies so we can kill them. When we have zero input on the dynamics of that war and how it started. Also, just on our way out the door, you can, let's see right here. If you want, let's see if I can find the, yeah, this is food for famine. There we go. Yeah. Whoops. There it is. Yeah. There are a bunch of organizations. This is a Canadian one. I'm trying to find one that, because the Shriners send these over. Yeah. I'll find the direct, because there's a direct pay link. There it is. 15. Yeah. They this is like a 15 pack for $42 or whatever. At some point they take, it's basically a pack a day. And UNICEF, if you donate to UNICEF, that's one of the areas that you can go to. I'm going to try and find the direct link. I'll have to look it up. Where you can donate to them and give specifically for that purpose if you want. You don't have to. You can just donate to UNICEF and know that a portion of it will go there. And then there are tons of others like, the programs that feed hungry kids. Most of what they're doing is buying these RUTF packages and getting them into these areas. And this goes to my whole conversation about, if you haven't watched the Hamas videos and you're complaining about, that Israel is a genocidal, monstrous organization, then I'm only having half a conversation with you and you're not factoring in anything. So you're going to look at someone and go, how could they feel this way? How could they think this way? Because you're not seeing what they've seen. It's important. It's an important part of the conversation. The other thing, too, is that if you're going to shit on your own country that you suckle from the bosom of it, like the Jimmy Dores of the world do, but you're not aware of what we do all the time in these kind of situations as a regular order, that every time the U.S. government does a budget, there's stuff for these kind of things in it all the time. Republicans, I think, are trying to cut it all the time, which is upsetting, but it's always there. And if you don't factor that in, the only thing you're ever going to hear about is, I guess, the argument about the military budget, which, by the way, includes a lot of like rebuilding and community building funds and that kind of stuff for areas that were previously war zones that have settled down so that they don't flare up again. Thank you, Ali Osher. Yeah. And if you don't know about those things, then I'm not interested in hearing, some military industrial complex bullshit conversation from you, because you don't know that that a democracy is a balancing act all the time anyways. And that includes when we're, dealing with war zones and the like. La Smoocherina likes it. Food for all apolitical. Apolitical. The war here as well as worldwide. We could Also help U.S. national disasters. I like the idea, Let's Mooch Arena. Reach out to me in the Discord. We'll figure out a way to. Yeah, I'm sure we're not first to that idea, so maybe we'll piggyback on somebody else and try to broaden it. Maybe that's the idea. So there you go. Yeah, all or nothing thinking is a fallacy. Exactly, Kath. Anybody who believes that life is a stroke of the pen or can be solved like that, these complex ideas, I got to say, you're gross. You're part of the problem, and you have to deal with it. Yeah. Yeah. You gotta consider those things. Look, I look at enough right wing video all the time to know when they make a point that is salvageable and maybe a bridge can be made there because it's a reasonable concern. Maybe their solution sucks, but they're not wrong about the problem, right? We can do that, but you got to listen to what they're complaining about and dig deep and find out what their real fear is before you'll ever get there, because they're terrible at articulating. And the same thing is kind of true about your own arguments. You always have to be able to handle other people criticizing them or cutting into them and push back with them with everything you have if you truly believe something. Don't half-ass your argument about something just to curry favor, because you'll never fix the conversation. Part of the point of argument is that both people come away with a better articulation of their ideals. I can say what I say in a clearer way. Hey, I can say what I say in a clearer way because I have argued my real point, not what I think you'd want to hear or what somebody else would want to hear, if that makes sense. I hope it does. And until tomorrow, good night, a ding, 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 ding. Good night, a ding, ding. By the way, tomorrow's show will be at the earlier time, like a regular show, I think, unless we have dinner plans, in which case I'll let you know. Have a great Thursday.